Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 1 of this 2-part series. I'm really excited how this project turned out. I'd love for you to see how it all came together, so stick around and find out. Welcome back in to the shop. Man, I'll tell you what, this is the second biggest individual piece I've ever made. I've made some commission pieces that had several different pieces that may square foot be bigger, but this was awesome. It is a half of a 6-foot circle with just a little bit shaved off the bottom to fit into the window. But it was an impressive piece. My desk you see I'm working on is 4 foot by 6 foot. And you'll see from time to time, and there I am, when I sneak through there, there's only about maybe 18 inches at most between that and the shelf a lot of my art supplies are sitting on. This project has been a long time in the making. Tracy and I initially met Steve, Chad, and Troy Anderson, who are amazing metal sculptors, at the beginning of our career doing art shows. As you can see from the art on the screen, just an impressive trio of artists who really know how to craft metal into very organic forms and just make art for your garden, for your house that makes you happy and it gives you a good positive vibe when you interact with it. I had to go ahead and bust out my 4-foot level in order to put the guidelines on this piece. I could only imagine how wonky this would get if I didn't have some sort of guidance. I try not to use too many lines, but the bigger the pieces are, the more lines it definitely helps. After getting all of the lines and my guidelines drawn on, the most important point is flip the art over. If you don't flip the art over, now you are left with the guidelines looking up at you, and it's really hard to erase those through 1/4-inch glass. One of the fun things I get to do with commission projects is my customers will give me items that are special to them, maybe grandma's china, something that just holds memory to them, and I will be able to incorporate that and those pieces into the art. So you'll see off to the bottom right there's a tray of strips, and it's hard to see, but what essentially Steve did with his metalworking abilities is he and his family have very strong faith, and it's so awesome that he was able to incorporate and manipulate metal into some Bible verses, some beautiful fish, and some just really cool abstract designs that I was able to add into the art that you'll see come into play. And I love to do that in the customized pieces because now it's double customized and no one will ever have that piece ever. Even if I try and recreate it, it won't have Steve's special touches that I was able to add to the art. Right now I'm working on the center, and you can see I've got kind of an outline. I used a bucket to give me a round shape to work on, and I will give that as a guideline, but you'll see in the final piece I really tried to take out as much of that line as possible. And as I worked with Steve and as I work with our customers, we'll talk about that. And initially I had kind of a hard line and we talked about removing that. And I love to get the customer's input as we work on the art because it just really helps me to give them the final product and piece that they want. Within the center, I was able to use a lot of different elements. Again, pieces that Steve made. I had a lot of amethyst and hand fused glass that I was able to use in the kiln. Very, very fortunate to know a couple individuals, one of them who is on a certain TV show, and she goes to different locations around the world, and I am very fortunate because they get me stones and rocks and even some patches for my hats that you'll see from time to time in my videos, and I was able to incorporate them. So just a lot of different elements bringing a lot of good energy into this piece. Look at me getting all fancy with the overhead cam. You get a real nice look at some of the pieces I'm using, again on top of the fused glass and the different elements. There's some Brazilian agates. I even have a couple of Steve's tips that he uses to weld his metal sculptures. So that's always fun to use items that I've never used in a piece before. As most projects do, this came about through serendipity. I had used a metal fabricator, if you will, to round mold some of my frames for my round art. I don't have that ability. It takes a pretty specific and heavy-duty piece of equipment to round bend, like half-inch channel. After 3 years of making my frames for me, he informed me, just like George Bush in the 90s,
"Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it."
That left me in a real bind going into art show season because I needed a couple frames rolled. So I racked my brain on who I knew or who I thought might be able to help me. And again, serendipity, I went to an art show at the very beginning of the season, one of the first in Michigan, and who was there but Chad Anderson. And we got talking about rolling this frame, and he said, get a hold of my dad, Steve. I get a hold of Steve. He brings me over to the shop. He rolls me out these couple of pieces, takes me into his amazing house and says, hey, what do you think about that half 6 foot circle window up there? Do you think you could make a piece that would fit that? Steve said his family was very much interested in eating the dinner, not the evening sun. And I told him I can help you out with that. Then Steve suggested something that blew my mind. Why don't we trade some art? I mean, what an awesome idea. This is something that artists have done probably since the beginning of art. To be asked to trade art with another family of artists that we just really have so much respect for, again, what an honor. And it's a little overwhelming to have such a responsibility to want to have the final output as awesome as when we look at their metal art. So this was such a great challenge. And again, thank you, Steve, and your family. What an honor, and it was an honor to make this piece for you. Like with any custom project, we started with a picture of the window that the art was going to go in, and I photoshopped around a few ideas. After a couple design changes, we came to the final design that you saw right at the beginning. Every time the family looks at the piece, not only will they see the color and the design that they wanted, but also those personal elements that Steve was able to handcraft and I was able to add in that really makes it personalized to their home. So as we get down to the end, you can see how there's a definite hard line around that circle. And after further discussion during the making process, we just talked about unhardening that line, removing some of those pieces, and just really bringing in some of those line elements into the center. And it really was a great choice, and it turned out really nice in the end. Now we are moving into the selection of glass I use for the project. Just a lot of fun colors. I always give a shout out to my man Eric Brown in Rockford, Michigan. He's where I get all my stained glass from if you ever wanted to buy some new. Oh man, look at that blue, the streaky. Love those greens in there. Yes, gold mirror, one of my favorites. Sort of a sky blue mixing into that green and white. Nice assortment of blues. Some iridescent blue as well, which is always fun. That's a nice kind of caramel color that really gave a nice yellow presence without being banana-y yellow. Aqua greens. Nice iridized tan color. Again, it gives that nice yellow appearance without being too much of a banana. A little bit of a darker blue, which I really like. Again, following up with different shades of green. And a little bit of blue to finish off. Now the tedious part, stripping out all the glass. Just for reference, that sheet I'm working with, at least the length is about 2 foot long, just a little short, probably 22 inches. And the strips that I'm cutting are going to be anywhere from a little less than 1/4 inch to maybe ½ inch at the most. And so to get glass to cut that long and that straight is pretty tough. And a lot of times I cannot use a guide like that ruler because it just messes with the cutting blade and it will not give you clean cuts. So you'll see from time to time that I will have to freehand straight cuts for about 22 inches, which can be very nerve-wracking. A lot of times I find with those really long strips, I will cut thicker strips and then I will split them. It's a little bit slower, but I find the results are much better and I waste a lot less glass. But even on that first one I just cut there, I didn't get it all the way to the end. And welcome to cutting strips of glass so thin. And I'm just going to show off at the speed at which I cut all of my glass. I also like to not use a guide because it gives me the whole philosophy of perfectly imperfect. Meaning if I used a guide and I got most of the pieces exactly the same every time, then the time that I didn't, or I needed kind of a weird shape to fit in but it make it still look okay, I wouldn't have that ability because now I have one imperfect and a bunch of perfect. Henry David Thoreau said, "I enjoy a broad margin to my life." And I feel that's what helps me create the best art. If I have a little bit of a margin to work with in terms of perfection, then I end up with a piece that to me looks perfect. I'm just about done cutting all the stained glass, and I'm really excited to get started on the rest of the piece. In episode 2, we'll lay all the glass work out, I'll grout the piece, and then we'll paint it. Finally, we'll deliver it to the Andersons and see what the installation looks like. I want to thank you so much for joining me in the Dragonfly Garage today. Come on back for episode 2 to see how we finish the project. Go ahead and hit that like button for me. and then smash that subscribe. Hey, don't forget to check us out on all the socials.